What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy, that's Joe, and this is the Race Day Rundown. Dude, you're back. Where you been, man? It's good to see you.
I am so glad to be back in studio and to be able to provide the Race Day Rundown in person. The virtual thing, well, it can't replace being in studio doing this live, and it's fun to make a return, and we do it just in time for the playoffs. Darlington's a big race. I've always been a fan of this track. Too tough to tame. I'm so excited to see the action-packed weekend and be here to do it with you. There's some things you want to talk about heading into this race at Darlington this week.
Well, I can say, unlike Austin Dillon, we actually did make the cut and were able to make this work out. So we're off to a good start, but we are a little bit behind from where we want to be, like Kevin Harvick. So lots to talk about. We covered basically the entire playoffs in our predictions video, the podcast we did this week. That was fun. I think I had a few little bombshells in there. I think you had a couple too. It's going to make this race really interesting. This first round in particular could go so many different ways. If we nail this first round, I think we're going to be set up good for the rest of our predictions. But there's a few things that could go wrong. We'll get into that in a second. But if you're here and you're looking for our race guide, we did move that to our Patreon for the playoffs. So that's where you can find that, along with some other stuff, including our garage thoughts, where you're going to see all of the data that we use to give you our impact scores, which I think we're just about ready there, but we need to get them set for Darlington, the Southern 500. I know this is one of your favorite tracks. You want to let them know what they're in store for?
Yeah, I'll give a little race preview here. The Darlington race this time around, second race of the year. This is a 500-mile version of the race that we had previously. If you want to check out the podcast from that for even more information and our thoughts earlier in the season, you can check that out in the description below. But since we do have 500 miles, it's actually 501.3.
Let's be correct about that.
Exactly. Yep. We've got 367 laps, so there's more performance points available to us at 256.9, and the stages break down at 15, 15, and 137, and then we've got a competition.
115, 115?
Yeah, 115,
yeah.
115, 137.
Yeah, that'll be a short race.
And then we've got a competition caution coming in at lap 25, so that's something to consider for strategy. This is a high tire wear track. This is 750 horsepower package that we're in this weekend. The previous winner, Martin Truex Jr., dominated earlier in the year. That was something to behold. But new race, new circumstances. The playoffs are underway. This is going to be fun.
And they also repaved one of the turns, didn't they?
They did. Turn 2 has been repaved. Denny Hamlin and who is it? Christopher Bell?
I believe so.
Are going to be in the Xfinity race taking part.
Tyler Reddick.
Tyler Reddick.
Yes.
So those two will have maybe a slight advantage, but I don't know if it's worth really diving into and making it part of your strategy. But, yeah, that is something.
I think the Hamlin is one to watch because we know he can really get around Darlington. I mean, even before all this kind of crazy COVID and different teams doing different stuff, this is the race that he would always try to get in for the Xfinity Series. He let Kyle Busch run whatever ones he wanted, but he would have this one circled. So you know that he's going to try to learn as much about this track as he can. I think he's got a good shot. So
yeah, his teammate Martin Truex Jr. dominated this race. If you want to go back and look at our results, we do a DK slate result review and put together performance points and all the different optimal lineup and all the different drivers that hit multiple value during that previous race. So Martin Truex Jr. was somebody that hit really hard on that slate. 89.9 performance points.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, he was easily the top performing driver at 13.39 value that race. So we have a lot of information and data available to you if you want to go check that slate review from this previous race in this year on our Patreon. But let's dive into it, man. This is going to be fun. Get these folks in and out with our DK impact scores. You want to let them know what we changed up here?
Well, you'll notice right off the bat that we're adding a half point in there, because if we didn't, in particular, we timed this good. We really did, because, man, if we went through here, there would be so many 9s, maybe even a lot of 10s in here, because there's a lot of interesting plays on the slate. But we tweaked it. We're going to give half points and whatnot in here, and I'm excited to kind of see where you land, because we tend to agree on a lot. I think this is going to help us get just a little bit different. I know we're different right off at the top of the board at Kyle Larson. Comes in 11,500, starting sixth, won the regular season championship, came back from what was like 150 points down to Denny Hamlin to take that. He's got such a massive points lead on basically everyone else, almost a full race. Very impressive. Great track for him. I'm giving him a 9.5.
Yeah, I landed on a 9, so I'm right there with you. I think he's going to be somebody that you really have to look at. He's been the champion of the regular season, so he is somebody you want to consider. I think I didn't go a little bit higher because there's a couple guys I'm a little bit more interested at their price points and their path to value. This is going to be a week where strategy is involved from a NASCAR team angle and also from a DraftKings angle, because there are multiple ways you could approach this. And we typically see a dominator in this style of race, and so hitting that and having exposure to multiple guys up here at the top, I think, is going to be key, because there is a lot of value lower on.
I wanted to ask you about that, because obviously, if you didn't have Truex in the most recent race, you weren't going to it was going to be a long day for you. I mean, he, like you said, he dominated. But we don't always see that at these types of tracks where you get a lot of laps. What is your hunch that we're going to see here? I mean, obviously, it can go so many different ways, but it's the playoffs now. Do you think it's going to be a one guy where you really want to try to spread out your ownership to hit a lot of guys? Or do you think we're going to see more of a 2, maybe even a 3 dominator with different strategy at play? What do you kind of got a gut feeling on it?
I think we'll see some, since we're points racing now, every position's a point. We talked about it in the podcast a lot. We'll hear Rick Allen say it multiple times, but this is the weekend where I think we'll see how teams are really going to approach this. Are they going to go points racing each stage? Who's going to take the risks for wins? And we'll see that play out early. I think we'll see a multiple lead changes throughout, because there's going to be strategy involved from these teams trying to gain advantages and points wherever they can. So we'll really get a grasp on it this week, but I think that we'll see multiple dominators in this race. Therefore, I don't want to go too heavy on one of these drivers at the top, because I think there is a lot of value to be had, like I said, in the middle and lower bottom portion of that salary board this week.
Yeah, I do agree with you there, and I think Kyle Busch is obviously one of those guys that we need to consider for that. He's next on the salary board, 11,200, starts 12th. I'm also at a 9.5, man. Both the Kyles, man, they're coming in hot. I know Kyle Busch has struggled a little bit more on these 750s versus 550s, but dang, I mean, 12th, there's PD upside there. He's been pretty strong all year. I got to give him a 9.5.
I've given him a 9. He's Darlington's not his best track. He's solid as always, as at most of these tracks that we get to. He's somebody that they really are in a good position, so they can, if they don't win, they're not going to get really knocked out. So I really look to them to points race a little bit more, and we'll see if he's in a position. I think a lot of drivers that are starting at the front, the position battles are going to be really interesting, because all 16 playoff drivers start in the first 16 positions. There's going to be a lot of races to watch throughout this in the overall major race. So Kyle Busch is going to find his way to make an impact. I'd still give him that 9.
Okay. So we are off on the next guy as well, but this is, I think, our top scorer, actually. And we've already talked about him. Martin Truex comes in 11,000, starts 10th. There's PD upside there. He doesn't have to lead that many laps to really pay off and get a good finish. The thing that surprises me the most about this, I'm at a 10. You gave him a 9.5. I gave him a 10 because I'm going off of what you've been saying for like 6 weeks now. Is this a playoff race, or is this a playoff track for them? No, I'm not worried about them doing good or whatever. And here you are not giving your guy a 10. I mean, I know you're like him for potential championship. 9.5, dude, weak.
No, I give him a 9.5 because I think this week, this track, this first week of the playoffs is very difficult for me to want to give a 10. So, spoiler, I don't have a 10 out there on the board this week, even though I really do think Martin Truex Jr. is in a great position and has a strong path to value. We've given him our checker flag in our race guide. That race guide is downloadable in the link below if you are a Patreon member, so go check that out. It's a great digital magazine to pair with all these numbers that we're talking about. But, yeah, Martin Truex is definitely somebody to pay attention to. Having exposure to these guys at the top is something that you're going to want to pick and choose because these price tags are pretty drastic. But at $11,000, there is still great value to be had with Martin Truex.
Yep, I like him a lot. I actually really like William Byron, who comes up next. He starts 14th, 10,700. So he's got a little bit of salary to pay off. I think he can do it though. I'm giving him an 8.5. What are you going to give him, Willie B?
I'm at 7.5. I think he's in a great position. 14th, he's got a strong path to value there as well because of that place differential. I just don't know if 750 has always been his strong suit. He's been really very more consistent in the 550 horsepower package. So I've given him a 7.5, which is almost an 8. I almost went there, but 7.5 is where I settled.
All right. Let's talk about Brad Keselowski a little bit. He could have a really good first round, but he could also see his way out. I've heard quite a bit of people already kind of picking him as one of their drivers not to advance out of the round of 16. I do have him advancing, more so because I think he could do some damage at Richmond. He dominated that race last year. And a little bit of a tough spot, though. He's starting 16th, 10,400. I'm at an 8. I think it's a solid play. There's PD upside there, but not been very strong on the 750s like you'd kind of want to see in this first round. Could be tough for him, but I still like his chances.
Yeah, he's just been too inconsistent as of late. I don't know if he's got his mind on his next racing endeavor. Obviously, he's a professional in the playoffs, so I assume he's going to be prepared, and he just doesn't have everything that I'm looking for. So I've given him a little bit of a lower score at a 7. I think Joey Logano, his teammate, who's next, 10,100, starting 11th, offers a little bit more upside with consistency in the 750 horsepower package. I've given him a 7.5.
I gave him a 7. This is a decent track for him, but not his best. I could see him struggling a little bit, but he's been pretty solid in the 750s, so I will give him credit. But I think a 7 is a solid score, but I don't know how much I'm going to end up with him. I think I'll end up with a few of the other drivers we've talked about and a few below. But I think that's still a pretty solid score for old Logano.
Kevin Harvick, 9,800, starting 9th. I've given him a score of 7.5, and I talked to you about it in the podcast where he's got to be able to have a strong performance here, and we really had high hopes for him going into this first race at Darlington earlier in the season when we talked about it, and he didn't perform like we wanted to, and really he's been up and down. So starting 9th, he's not a bad risk at $9,800, so I want to have exposure to him, but I just don't want to go overboard because of how inconsistent they've been.
I wouldn't even say it's that inconsistent for them. It's more of the fact that they're just not performing like we're used to seeing them. They're getting 7th to 10th, 11th place finishes fairly frequently. I think they're leading that category or top 3 or something like that in like top 10s. Like they're getting some nice results. A lot of teams would like to have their results, but when you come off of 9 wins last year, including this race in the first round last year and at Bristol, you got quite a bit of high expectations. You know what I mean? So I'm at a 7.5. I think he could bust through. Maybe there's a little bit that Stuart Haas is going to find here in the playoffs. But I think you may have also seen the little interview Smoke did a few weeks ago saying we kind of have what we have. If that's the case, it could be trouble early for guys like Harvick and Amarola.
We'll find out. I think Denny Hamlin is somebody that we might differ on a little bit. He comes in this week starting second, $9,500. I landed on an 8 because I think we see a couple dominators, he could be up there leading portions of this race. He's been fairly strong in this 750 equipment. Are they coming out in the playoff mindset looking to show domination and do it early? I see that potential there, yes. But at the same time, man, I don't know where they're at right now. I think with some of the stuff that I've seen throughout this week, who knows where his mind is, and we'll see what happens ultimately. And he does have that leg up by running the Xfinity race, so he could be in a great position. I think that's why you gave him a little bit of a higher score.
Yeah, I landed at a 9.5 for Denny Hamlin, and I think this is a very critical race for that team. If he struggles here, and if he struggles really at all in this first round, I think it could be a short playoffs for him. So I'm kind of going off the fact that they're going to have a little bit more for the playoffs, just Joe Gibbs as a whole. I know what he can do here. He's starting second. I know there's no real PD upside there. But if he's able to get around Blaney early, providing obviously neither one goes to the rear, we don't have information on that yet. If none of these guys go to the rear, I think he can get around Blaney early enough before the comp caution and potentially beat these guys off pit road. If he does that, I think he can get out front. He might even sail away to lead 50, 60 laps. When you're below 10K, you do that, you can hit your value at a lot easier than Larson and whatnot. So that's kind of why I'm at a 9.5. I think you can get really good value. And then also the fact is he can legit do what Martin Truex did in this first race. We saw him do that at a couple other tracks this year. He just didn't close it out, but you lead 150 laps. You don't need to finish first. So that's why I'm at a little bit higher score on Denny Hamlin.
Yes, it's an 8. Or I've given him an 8, just like Chase Elliott. I've given him an 8. He's 9,200, starting 4th. I think both these plays are great, fantastic plays for the price point. They both have extreme upside, but they also have some downside with that high starting position. That's why I haven't given them a little bit higher score, but I see your point. You're probably looking at Chase Elliott as being in a similar position.
Yeah, I'm at a 9. He's had some really good runs here and some unfortunate finishes. Kind of skews his data a little bit. Playoff time. Let's see what you can do. He's got really good 750 data. Now, that's skewed because of the road course. All the ones we've had like 1,700 already. But even outside of those tracks, he's still run really well. I think this track can kind of suit his driving style a little bit. Hopefully, crew chief makes some good calls. We've seen some questionable calls this year. If all that pans out, I think Chase Elliott could also have a good day. Maybe not win, but get up there, get some nice, 30, 40 laps led, some, 25 fast laps. That's good. That'll kind of pay off that salary.
Yeah, Alex Bowman, his teammates next on the salary board, 8,900, starting 5th. I think he's the wild card of all wild cards this week in my book. I've given him a 7 because I think he can be in the optimal and the outright winner of this race, and I could also see him finishing 22nd to 24th and being in 2 laps down. Really, the most inconsistent driver of the Hendrick stable. We're in playoff mode. Is he able to really take that next step? We don't know, but I'm at a 7 starting 5th. It's just so iffy with him. He's got a path to being able to hitting 5X and not getting a top 5 finish if he's able to get some fast laps and being up front, getting some strategic laps led. So he's an interesting spot.
Yeah, for old Bowman, I'm going to give him a 7.5. Yeah, he's kind of Jekyll and Hyde. You don't know what you're going to get. Strong 750 data. It's a toss-up for him, but I like it. I like the chances of him doing well. And also, I don't think he's going to be very popular starting 5th. Not a lot of people are going to play him. So I think that's an opportunity to take a risk. If it pays out, it could pay out really, really good. I think the next guy we should talk about is Ryan Blaney, 8,500. He starts first. I think he's potentially one of the biggest question marks of this race. He's coming off 2 wins. Was not looking good as points-wise before those 2 races. Now he's tied for Truex in second. This could be a very tough round. I mean, he did not make it past this round last year. He's in a better position. Not been as strong on the 750s as the 550s. What do you think? I know you've been kind of a little bit heavier on Blaney kind of throughout this stretch than what I have, and you've been accurate more times than you were wrong. What do you think we're going to get from Ryan Blaney this race? He starts first.
Yeah, he starts first. I've given him a 7.5. A little bit closer to that 8, but right there at that threshold, because I haven't seen the consistency in the 750 horsepower package with that team. 550 data is a lot stronger, especially recently. That's why I'm a little bit less likely to have more exposure to him, but he could come out and have a great race and run away with it, and if you don't have him, look out.
Yeah, with 8,500, I'm going to give him a 7 because if he is able to lead the whole first, little short stage before the comp caution, that's going to go a long way. He's out front, clean air. He should get quite a few fastest laps. Again, if he maintains that. If he does it throughout and they all come down and pit, which I'm sure they will, I doubt anybody's going out there, staying out there on old tires at Darlington. You don't do that. If he's able to maintain that track position, kind of similar to what I said about Hamlin, he can pick up some cheap laps, and this isn't the strongest track for him, but if he falls back to 7th or 8th with 40, 50 laps led, there's really no problem there. So I'm at a 7. I'm a little lower than you, but I do like him, but I am a little worried about it.
Austin Dillon, 8,300, starting 21st. I really think he's in a decent spot here, starting where he is. He's got some place differential upside. I've given him an 8. I see that you've landed on a similar score with him as well. Do you think he's decent value this week?
I'm at an 8. Starting 21st, it's kind of like kind of have to. I mean, if he gets 12th, 13th, something like that, it's going to be good for you. So 8 for me. I don't think there's much to say about Kurt Busch. He has a chance to win here. He's starting 3rd, though, 8,100. I got to give him a 6. It's a little tough for me to want to play him, but he could be a very low-owned driver, and if he pops off, you're looking good.
Yeah, I've given him a 6 as well. I think him and Tyler Reddick, they could be an interesting plays in GPP tournaments. I've given Tyler Reddick a 5, starting 7th. He could come out and win this race, but it's a coin flip with him and being a first-time driver in the playoffs.
Tyler Reddick is next. 8,000, starting 7th, pointed his way into the playoffs. The only, 2 drivers pointed their way in. But it was very questionable that last race at Daytona. Dillon looked great until the very end. Reddick gets in. I think he could get past this first round. But from a DK perspective, I'm only going to give him a 5.5 here because to me it's slightly better than a coin flip. He could do good. He could win this race. He really could. But I think it's starting in the playoffs. We'll see. I need to gauge where that team is at. So 5.5 for me.
Chris Buescher, Matty D, I think are both very similar plays. 7,800 for Chris Buescher starting 34th. Matty D, 7,700 starting 30th. I've given Chris Buescher an 8.5 and a Matty D an 8. I think they are interchangeable, or you could stack them both. I think they could be keys to unlocking the slate.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to kind of see how many Chris Buescher, Matty D combo stacks that we see in the on the slate or in the contest, because they don't have to do that much. They don't even have to reach like their full potential here to pay off. I mean, they could have a semi-average or subpar day and still pay off that price tag. I'm at a 9 for Buescher. There's a little more PD upside there for me. But Matty D, I mean, this is probably when he's going to win it, after he's already out of the playoffs or something like that. So I'm at 8.5 for De Benedetto.
Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and Cole Custer, they're in the $7,000 price tag. I think this range right here is going to be interesting. We've got very similar scores on these drivers because they have pretty much the same path to value depending on how this plays out. I am going to give Ross Chastain the highest score out of that with a 7. I'm landed on a 6 for both Suarez and Custer because I haven't seen the consistency, especially lately. That's where I'm at on those 3.
Yeah, I think these are guys that you're going to want to sprinkle in. My favorite would be Suarez. I'm at a 7.5 on him. Ross, I'm going to be at the same score with you. I'm at a 7. I think he could do it, but a little tougher. Cole Custer, I guess I'm a little bit better than you. I'm at 6.5 because, when you start 31st, you should do better than that in Stewart-Haas equipment, even though you're having a down year. But obviously we know that is iffy with Cole Custer. So 6.5 for me for the Custa.
Eric Almirola, 7,000, starting 8th. Caution flag in our race guide because he is one of those drivers who is a little bit further back. He could have a strong performance, but he could. We haven't seen the consistency in this equipment. I'm at a 4. I really don't want too much exposure for him starting in the top 10.
Yeah, he's a little less than a coin flip for me. I'm at a 4.5. Look, he has to do something in this round. If he gets past this one, he has a chance. He's really good at Talladega. He could actually go way further in the playoffs than he should. The win at New Hampshire on the 750 horsepower track, it gives me a little hope for them. I'm sure it's got to give them a lot of hope. But from a DK perspective and playing him in lineups, I might try to build one where he does better than I think he would, but I'm not going to go heavy at all, so that's why I'm at a 4.5. I think the other guy that is going to be really interesting to watch in this first round, if he could get past, he's in the same boat as Eric Almirola, and that's the other guy he's the longest guy that we've known that's been in the playoffs. That's Michael McDowell, 6,400. He starts 15th. Unfortunately, he's not the best at 750 tracks this year. I don't see him advancing this round. It would be awesome if they can because you got the road course and super speed, like I already said. But I'm going to be at a 4 on McDowell. I really want them to do something. It would be awesome for that team and for Michael, but DK-wise, it's a little tough for me.
Yeah, I landed on a 3. I think the 2 drivers below him are in better positions. That's Chase Briscoe, 6,300, starting 24th, and Eric Jones, 6,100, starting 22nd. I think these guys will be pretty highly owned. Briscoe had an 11th place finish, I believe, here earlier in the season. I've given him an 8, and I've landed on an 8 for Eric Jones. This seems to be Eric Jones' highest performing track as a driver, and he's got those results in multiple pieces of equipment. So he's been consistent and strong here. He knows how to get the most out of his car. I like him and Briscoe both this week.
Yeah, we really like Jones, or I really like Jones the first time around, and he was looking good, but I believe he had like a tire go down at really the wrong time. Got down on laps and just never got everything to fall right for him to get back in it. It could be different this time. But Briscoe's another guy that I like. I'm at an 8, the same as you. But Jones, I got a tick higher at 8.5. If I'm picking between the two, I'm probably going Jones because of the consistent track history. Briscoe's been more inconsistent this year. Do we get a similar 11th place finish from earlier, or do we see him do bad stuff again? So that's the difference for me on those guys.
And these guys down here at the bottom, these guys this week, you really want to be careful with because this track race is like a short track. They could go multiple laps down really quickly, and if you start to do that, it's going to be very hard to make up and make a strong day of it. So Anthony Alfredo, starting 32nd, $5,800, is somebody that some people might lean on, and I'm being very cautious this week. I've given him a 4.
The biggest threat for guys like Alfredo or even Chris Buescher or Matty D, we've already talked about, is going down laps early before the comp caution and not being able to stay on the lead lap. If that happens, we saw it with Alfredo. He actually could have had a really good Daytona, but he had to do, I think, a pass-through penalty, went down a lap, and there was so many slow cars in the field that, he starts behind all those guys when you're a lap down, that those guys were getting lapped by the leaders, by the pack, before he could pass them, and then a caution would happen, and then they would get the lucky dog. So it really can screw you when you're Anthony Alfredo in this position. So you do got to be careful. I'm glad you kind of said that. But for me, he's a coin flip. I'm going to give him 5.
Ryan Newman is somebody I think we differ on as well. I've given him an 8. He's starting 19th at $5,700, and he's got great history here. He's a strong performer at this kind of style of racing, but he's also Ryan Newman and has been in very many lineups that have been garbage this year. So somebody to look at if you're looking for someone in this price range, that's where I'm going at $5,700. I've given him an 8 because he has everything to look at throughout his career to be successful here.
I'm going to have Newman too. I'm at a 6. I'm just going to be more cautious. I don't think I'm going to end up quite as high. He's been in several situations just like this where he should perform, and he's just completely tanked too many of my lineups. I'll build some with him just in case. I'll try to pick who I think is going to be the best to fit around him to make it work, but he won't be a core driver for me. But a 6 is still a decent score down here.
And I think really the last driver I want to touch on is Corey LaJoie, 5,500, starting 25th. He's somebody I feel that if you really are trying to get weird with it, he has some upside, very little. He has to have everything kind of go right. I've given him a 6, but man, he can get the job done if he's in the right scenario. And he's got a little bit more of a head start this week than he has in weeks past, starting 25th.
Are you saying you're getting weird with it in reference to Corey LaJoie's mullet? Like, is that what you mean by that? Come on, man. That's old stacking pennies over there, man.
Gotta love him.
Well, you love him a little bit more than me. I'm at a 5. There is upside there. But again, he starting 25th, as long as he doesn't come with just the car way off, if he can stay in that lead lap, he could actually really do well. So I do like him. But again, if you go down laps early, if they're struggling at all, that's why for me, it's like if I can avoid it, I will. But some of these guys are expensive, so you're probably going to have to go here. So I think he's a solid play for sure.
And if you want to check out all the other drivers and scores that we might not have touched on, go check out our race guide. Again, the Patreon is where that resides. If you want to take advantage of some early offers, we've got some discounted rates there. So there are still plenty of those available if you want to get in on the action. This is going to be fun. I'm excited we got to do this in person. The race day rundown is something I really look forward to every week, just also along the lines of our DK contest. So if you want to get in on our weekly free contest on DraftKings, drop your tag, DraftKings tag below in the comments. And if you like what you saw, let us know by hitting that subscribe button, and we'd love the engagement. So comment on anything that you might have liked or disliked about our episode today. Jeremy, do you have anything to add, or are you ready to get this thing rolling?
Well, I just want to add real quick, if you're just one of those guys who maybe doesn't want to put your DK tag out there on the comment section, shoot us a DM on Twitter. We'll add you that way too. There's no harm in that. You never kind of know sometimes these days. So whatever floats your boat. Also, check out our prize picks video. I think that there's some nice lines, but check it out because they may move a little bit. So that should be fun for y'all.
Well, this has been fun. I'm excited to be back in the studio with you. But for now, this has been the DK Garage. I'm Joe. That's Jeremy. And we'll see you next time.
Welcome back.